alternative.
They were trying to find a school that would keep me, no matter how many times I ran away.
Instead of simply punishing unacceptable behavior,
my mom's abused me, beat the shit out of me.
We've been looking for ways to change that behavior. This facility, called Elan, claims to be able to do that.
This is the last stop on the bus. If you don't send your son here, he's going to be dead. You can count on it.
Where the fuck am I?
The Elan program was twofold.
At Elan, the first thing they learn is you're not going to get out of here.
You succeed and survive if you accept the program. If you don't, there are punishments.
I'm going to hurt anybody they want.
I realized the only way to get through the program and remain sane was to put up a front that you are one of them. The only thing I can compare is living in Nazi Germany while secretly being a Jew. These are the words of a student who spent a couple of years of his life at Elan. Just imagine a place that's built on the single ultimate motto of helping children and teenagers who are going through a rough patch in their lives and don't have anyone or anywhere to help them through. But instead of helping them, anyone who comes to this place goes on to become 10 times worse mentally, physically, and morally. If you're from America and you've spent your fair share of time on Reddit, I bet you will be familiar with an institute called the Elan School, an institution that remained open for almost 40 years. But during that time and up until now, its legacy is nothing but trauma, controversy, and abuse. A place so bad that many have called it the worst boarding school ever, or the last place where a teenager should be. As more and more information has started to come out about what really went on inside, many experts have given Elan School the status of a manipulative and troublesome cult. By the way, has been responsible for the deaths of about half a dozen students. But the question here is, if this place was so bad, why did parents let their children go here? What was so bad about it that caused the deaths of so many students? And why would someone go on to call some school a cult? Let's try finding some more answers. Today I will be discussing about this cult in a boarding school with you.
You know, this lack of quality, you know, this crap, you know, just will not be tolerated.
You know, maybe you ought to think about getting a grip on it, man. You know, there's your responsibility. You ought to clean the bathroom this morning, man. Yeah, you should remember next time. You know, because it's off the wall.
Started stabbing myself in my stomach.
You know, I guess you clean out the showers, too. You know, every one of them uses the shower.
Because I wanted my father to, you know, come and say, it's okay, Diana, you know, you're going to be all right. You know, you're a very sick little girl. I just wanted him to know that he loved me because I felt like he didn't. I felt like nobody did.
A day at Elan. So first of all, let's talk about the workings of Elan School. Elan was basically a boarding school with grades 8 to 12. According to the rules, the minimum age to be at Elan was 13, and while by 18, you were supposed to graduate and of course leave the school. But there were many students who were over 18. A typical day at Elan was pretty well structured. The day would start at 8 AM sharp. Students were given 40 minutes to wake up, shower, and get dressed. After this, in 20 minutes, they had to clean the dorms and undergo a thorough inspection. At around 9, breakfast would be served. After eating, you would have to clean the dining room and have it inspected. From 10 AM until noon, house meetings or general meetings would take place, where various activities of the program would be conducted by the staff members. Any student refusing to participate in these activities was punished. After this, lunch was served, which was again followed by more cleaning or other pointless tasks. Sometimes there would be groups in the afternoon after lunch, where students would be encouraged to verbally abuse each other, make accusations, and degrade others. After all of this, students would have their dinner at 4 p.m., followed by more cleaning, and weirdly, the actual school proceedings would take place in the evening after dinner. So the school was from 7 to 11 p.m., but with no homework, tests, projects, or assignments of any kind. Up until this point, you must be wondering that Elan is just another boarding school with strict and weird rules and a rigid timetable. But is it enough to call it a cult? Let's take graduation for example. Normally when you go to a school, you have to pass some classes. When you pass all of them, you graduate. But things were a bit different here at Elan. In order to graduate from the program at Elan, you had to have a minimum of 7 promotions. And only then would administrators consider you for graduation. As there were no tests or assignments, no one really knew the criteria for these promotions. A single such promotion took a minimum of 3 months, and more than 90% of the kids never made past 5 promotions. According to former administrators, never letting the students graduate was a way for Elan to earn more money off them. So under such circumstances, kids were left with no other option other than to wait until they turned 18 to legally sign themselves out. Also, what's important to note here is that in Elan, your actual high school education and level didn't matter a bit. There were various cases of students who had been done with their senior year of high school but had to start from zero just because the Elan administrators thought they should. Now, if you remember while telling you about the daily routine at Elan, I mentioned a thing called meetings. So the whole motto of these meetings was confrontation. Each new student at Elan was subjected to a process called breaking, where they were verbally and emotionally attacked by their peers in group therapy sessions. A former student explained this practice as, "We were all forced to perform in a ritual called a general meeting where the entire house, 60 or maybe more boys and girls, screamed at one child who stood behind a broomstick. Many times, they were forcibly held up by 2 other students, so they would have to accept the punishment."
Now maybe I think about getting a grip on it, man. Now that you responsibility. Now to clean the bathroom this morning, man. Yeah, you should remember next time. Yo, cause it's off the wall. Yo, I guess you clean out the showers too. Yo, every one of them uses the showers. Yo, just being irresponsible.
Various experts from the education field have criticized this technique, saying that they can't see any possible positive outcome from such a way of rehabilitation and education. If you thought that shouting at a new kid was something weird, wait till you hear about this next practice. So in 2015, a former student who had left Elan back in 2008, while answering questions on Reddit, told about this weird practice or ritual, whatever you want to say, and it was named Fight Club. And it was taken up regularly in this school. Yes, you heard me exactly right. And no, these weren't just some kids hitting each other in cafeteria. These were properly organized fights, with staff members overlooking them. One of the former students actually gave a statement on it. "We were forced to participate in staff-organized fight clubs, none of which were fair. All were designed to humiliate one child, who would be put up against at least 3 others. So even the children who followed the rules were forced to fight in the name of good." This was brutal and horrifying, and a permanent scar on these kids' consciousness.
Joe, you make no bones about it. There is corporal punishment here at Elan. Tell us about it. What are the stages it comes in? Who's it administered by?
Well, it's administered by the kids. First of all, corporal. It's a harsh term. Okay, what it is we have the ring. Okay, which everybody misinterprets. It's not a boxing ring, it's a ring of human people. The bully is introduced as what he is. In this corner is the bully who's trying to turn this facility into a detention center. Okay, and in this corner is the house champion who's going to show him why it can't be done. And that's exactly how it does. And we never allow the bully to win.
But girls get put in the ring too.
Well, girls bully as well as boys do. I mean, you know, it doesn't, You know, we're a equal rights facility. We also use spanking, which is symbolic. Again, it's a last resort. Okay, and it's one resident spanking another resident, and it's done with a ping pong paddle. Okay, and usually a person won't get spanked more than once or twice, but it's a symbolic thing, which is if you're going to act like a baby, you should be treated like a baby.
At Elan School, there was no such thing as privacy. All outgoing letters from students to parents were thoroughly screened, and almost 90% of the time, students had to write many different drafts until they were accepted. Similarly, all phone calls to their homes were strictly monitored, and they were allowed only about 15 minutes a week. The person who monitored the call would have their hand hovering over the hang-up button as a constant reminder of their reality, telling them that they were just trapped in campus with no contact outside. If you were a newcomer at Elan, you couldn't just write or receive letters right away. According to the rules, you were not allowed to write or receive letters until you earned the right. And this could take up to 8 months or even more. A new student, while talking about his experience, told that when someone wrote to me, my unopened letters were ripped up in front of me as motivation to move up in the program. So brainwashing was a big part of Elan. Students from the very beginning were subjected to rigorous manipulation and breaking, to the point where they would just stop thinking on their own and do what the administration would want them to do. The whole brainwashing concept was known among administrators as a thing called the Elan technique. So what would happen if you, being a student, refused to comply with any of the mentioned rules or practices? Well, Elan had a whole set of punishments to bring such teenagers in line. One of the first things that rebels of Elan had to face was solitary confinement. I'm not talking about some high security risk prison. This is a school for teenagers which uses this practice. According to one of an ex-student, children who tried to rebel or be free-thinking were thrown into an isolation room where they had to stay for months at a time. They had to sleep at night on a dirty mattress on the floor of the isolation room. The mattress was brought to them at midnight and they were woken up around 7 a.m. It's pretty scary and messed up. But that wasn't all. Other than this, physical restraints were also a popular punishment. There were accounts of students being physically restrained by staff members at the school. Some of the former students have described being forcibly restrained for pretty minor misbehavior. Other than this, students were also assigned manual labor tasks such as cleaning or maintenance work as a form of punishment or to work off their transgressions. Sometimes students were punished for as little as smiling. According to a report by the New York Times, at Elan School, smiling without a permission can lead to a session of cleaning urinals with a toothbrush that can last for hours. A string of controversies. Ever since its opening, Elan had regularly faced a lot of backlash and had been a part of various controversies. And to be honest, because of the severity and bizarreness of its programs, these controversies were bound to happen. The first major controversy dates back to 1975, when Illinois state officials removed 11 children from the Elan program because of constant reports of alleged mistreatment. Still, no action was taken against the administration. Similarly, in the late 1970s, rumors of abuse at the Elan campus were getting way too much. So to check for himself, Androscoggin County Sheriff's Office Lieutenant Max Ashburn visited the school. However, the staff did not allow him to enter inside the school past the lobby. Following this, he got alarmed and began keeping a file in which he will document names and phone numbers related to Elan, as well as reported abuses. So moving into the 2000s, more and more news about the abuse started coming, and in 2003, a class action lawsuit was filed against Elan School on behalf of a former student who alleged abuse and mistreatment during their time at the facility. The lawsuit, known as DW versus Elan School, accused the school of subjecting students to physical, emotional, and psychological abuse, as well as violating their rights under Maine law. in 2004, the case was settled out of the courts for an undisclosed amount. As part of the settlement, Elan School agreed to make changes to its program and policies, although the specifics of these changes were not made public. According to different sources, this amount was $30 million. Now, the controversies related to Elan School aren't just limited to lawsuits or abuse reports. Throughout its history, the school has been a site or indirectly the cause of the deaths of several people. The most infamous one among these deaths is that of a 15-year-old Martha Moxley, who was killed by an ex-student of Elan. Similarly, if you remember, I told you about the fight clubs at Elan. One such fight took place on December 27, 1982, where a participant named Phil Williams died after some punches to his head. He was just 15 years old at the time. Basically, Williams had been punished for talking back to staff and was bitten so badly that he died. No charges were filed, however, because of a lack of evidence. Other than this, there were plenty of cases where runaways from Elan faced horrible tragedies and even deaths while they were trying to get to their homes. Moreover, some of the people even attempted suicide because of PTSD from the abuse they had faced in school. I really wonder, how did a school like Elan come into being in the first place? Who was behind all this, and well, frankly, what were they even thinking? Elan School came into being in the year 1970 when its first campus was co-founded by Joseph Ricci, a 25-year-old former heroin addict who in his short life up to that point had his fair share of experience with drugs, crime and rehabilitation. Now, our founder Joe had been a hardcore addict since he was 12 years. And by the age of 18, because of his run-ins with law enforcement, he was presented with two choices: either spend 7 years in prison or go to a rehabilitation center. Joe chose the latter option. For Joe, his time in the rehabilitation center was excellent. He not only became sober and a success story for the program, but he himself made a plan to become a pioneer and a leader in the field of rehabilitation. Hence, the concept of Elan was born. According to those who personally knew him, Joe was a charming man with the ability to convince the people around him, and probably this is why he was able to convince Dr. Gerald Davidson, a child psychiatrist working for Massachusetts General Hospital, into opening Elan School with him. Joe, with his skills and experience in the rehabilitation center, and Gerald with his knowledge of child psychology, made up an extraordinary pair, and thus began the phenomena of Elan. So Elan School was basically a 33-acre campus in Portland, Androscoggin County, Maine, USA. Joe, because of his time in rehabilitation, felt that the only possible and effective way of countering these drug and attitude problems with teenagers was through strictness and the use of force. So Elan's unconventional therapeutic approach was almost completely inspired by the cyanide model, which involved intense peer confrontation and psychological pressure to break down youngsters and build them back up. In 2001, Joe Ricci died and the school's charge was taken over by his widow, Sharon Terry. Although the school had been seeing a decline in admissions since the mid-90s, many experts claim that Ricci's death further paced the decline. Moreover, the news about the abuse at the school was getting to the mainstream media more and more, and thus Elan School was finally closed in 2011, following years of legal battles and mounting public scrutiny. There's no denying that Joe in his own mind was running this school as a cult, where the only purpose of the students was to live according to him. Like many cult leaders, Joe was earning lots of money in the process. However, the living conditions at Elan were still subpar in most cases. It's 2024 and Elan School has been closed for 13 years now. Still, there are many who are afraid to even think about the years they have spent in Elan School because of a simple fear of all of it coming back to their minds. Do let me know your comments about this school in the comment section, and thanks for watching. Also, you can suggest me some new topics for my next video.